Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Jane Rediker, President and CEO of the Greater Silver Spring Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you all this morning to our webinar where we'll hopefully learn a lot more about how the county's Data Montgomery and other sites on the website for the county can help us grow our businesses and find business opportunities and find partners and find some ways to make connections. We're pleased to host this event along with our sister chambers in Montgomery County. And so I'm going to give each of my colleagues a chance to introduce themselves and welcome them. And then we'll welcome, I'll also quickly welcome my staff, Julie Polakowski and Courtney Jenkins. Thank you for being with us this morning. And now the first person I see over here is Margie from Rockville. So Margie.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for attending and learning what the county is offering. I'm Margie Graff, President and CEO of the Rockville Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you. Janann?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Janann Italiano, CEO of the Greater Bethesda Chamber. And again, I'm pleased to be able to join in with my colleagues in the chamber world, as well as with Montgomery County and Judy Stephenson in providing this information to you. Look forward to it.
And Marilyn? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm going to get a t-shirt that says I'm on mute. Marilyn Balcom, I'm the president and CEO of the Gaithersburg Germantown Chamber of Commerce. It's great to see a lot of my members, a lot of old friends, a lot of new friends, and I'm really looking forward to the presentation today. And I have a staff with me today. Laura Rolls and Chelsea Selby are here today too.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. And now let's get to the reason we're here. So I'll introduce Judy Stephenson, who is the Small Business Navigator, who is the most influential and best person that the business community could possibly have within county government. We love Judy. We've known Judy for a long time, and she's a really wonderful source of information. She's a wonderful advocate for the business community, and the Bethesda Chamber just gave her an award for that recently, so it was well-deserved. So with that, Judy Stephenson, it's yours, and I'll let you share your screen. Welcome.
Well, thank you all so much. I just want to take a moment to recognize how valuable the chambers are in Montgomery County and what a great job they do advocating and representing the businesses. I also want to just say it's wonderful to see familiar faces on this. It's just, hey guys, I see all kinds of people I know. So that's really nice. I like that. And also, you know, this seems like kind of a dry topic, right? I mean, data, how exciting is that? But seriously, there is so much information out there that businesses could use to build their business. And I try to encourage people to think beyond Montgomery County as a customer. Sure, that's an option, and we'll look at some ways you can figure out what the county buys and who they buy it from. But just again, some data. Into 2020, the county issued 126 formal and informal solicitations, 126. Estimates are we have about almost 60,000 businesses in Montgomery County. So you can see that thinking of Montgomery County as a customer is limiting, right? Because there's only so many contracts and there's certainly a lot more businesses. So what I'm trying to do is encourage people to think bigger, using data to build their business, data that's available from Montgomery County, not just thinking of Montgomery County as a customer. So I'm going to share my screen, and what I'm going to do is actually take you to actual sites where you can start, let's see. Okay, can you see that? Okay, so the place we're going to start is actually Data Montgomery. And Data Montgomery, it's astonishing to me over time how few people know about Data Montgomery. Data Montgomery is a set of data sets, almost 200 of them the last time I looked, that include all kinds of information about Montgomery County. Some of it's about Montgomery County government, some of it's about just activities within the county, but it is rich with data that people can use for a whole variety of purposes. And as residents, many business owners are residents of Montgomery County. You should know about this. And as businesses, you should be leveraging this to build your business. So we're starting at Data Montgomery because this is where you can find links to other really important data sets. So the first one we're going to look at is the budget. So we're going to look at the operating budget, not the capital improvement budget, because this is what county departments spend, okay? So most of you all probably know that Montgomery County doesn't do a forecast like the federal government does. But if you use these data sets, you can build a forecast based on the information that Montgomery County is making available, okay? So just for the sake of argument, we're gonna run through an example. Please don't feel limited by this example, okay? This is just an example, but I think it's illustrative of what can be done. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna look at county departments. And the department I wanna look at is the Department of General Services. There it is, sorry. So General Services, you know, runs and manages all of the buildings that Montgomery County has, and does a lot of other operational types of things for the facilities of the county. So this is the budget for General Services, and what we're going to do is we're going to visualize, okay? We're going to look at this visually. So what I looked at when I was doing this example is what is the biggest budget item for the Department of General Services? You can see it's facilities management. So that's kind of an interesting thing, right? So that's taking care of the buildings. So let's look at it a little deeper. And I'm sorry, I think the internet is really stressed. Because what we're really interested in is not personnel costs, because that's something that's internal to the county, but we're interested in these operating expenses, right? So the county spends more than $16 million on facilities management operations, okay? So after we get an idea of that, so now we know that this is a big budget item. I mean, that's a significant amount of money. So now we're gonna go look and see what Montgomery County spent on facilities management in 2020. We're going to look at facility, oh, I'm sorry. So this is spending Montgomery, okay? We went back to Data Montgomery, and one of the options in Data Montgomery is spending Montgomery, okay? So that's what we're looking at now. We're looking at spending Montgomery, and we're going to look at facilities management. So here in 2020, we spent almost $40 million on facilities management. It's a lot of money. So let's click on the actual category and look at it by vendor. Okay, so you can see there's actually like 135 vendors. But let's just look at this one. This is the biggest one. And we spent over $3 million with Gov Services, Inc. in 2020 on facilities management. Again, fairly significant amount of money. This is all public information. Let me just stop and say that, right? So it's all public information. This is not a secret. This is accessible to anybody that knows that it's here, okay? So the third piece of the puzzle. So now we've had budget, Montgomery. This is kind of looking forward. We know we're going to spend money on facilities management. This is spending Montgomery. This is what we spent in 2020. So this is the look back. Now we're going to look at the current. Okay, now we're back to Data Montgomery. In this particular case, we're going to search Data Montgomery for contracts. Okay. Give it a minute to pull it up. So this is the snapshot of all of our current contracts. Okay, public database. Every contract in Montgomery County is listed in this database. Now this page here, the first page you'll see is kind of a summary page, sort of describes what it is and how often this is updated daily. And then what we really want to do is view the data. So this is the complete data set of active county contracts. We'll look at a minute to see how many there are, but so actually, to move this. So what we're going to look up is that Gov Services company, right? Come on. All right, so here is the Gov Services contract. And one of the things I want to point out here, this is a recent enhancement to Data Montgomery. Procurement has actually put a link to download the contract documents right here in Data Montgomery, okay? I will tell you that they're not available for every contract, but they actually are available for this one. So you can download the contract documents and see what's in them, which is really valuable, right? If you're thinking of bidding on a contract. So let's look at some of the information that you can find here. So not only can you download the documents, but you can see who the buyer is, you can see who the vendor is, you can see where they're located, you can see their contact information, you can see who the department is, the buyer or the contract administrator in the department, and then this is important, you can see when the contract was executed, when it expired originally, because most of our contracts are annual, so there's a 1-year expiration date. This one, actually, this one was 3-year. Anyway, so the only extension on this is through the end of May. So that means this contract is actually going to be up for bid this year. So that's good information, right? So that is one way to see what the county's planning on buying, what the county spent on something, and who has the contract. But I actually want people to think bigger than that. So let's think about the fact that if you're a facilities management company, and let's say this contract wasn't expiring in May, or even if it is, it's one contract. And how many facilities management companies are there in the county, right? So what other ways could we think about data the county might have that would be useful to us as a facilities management? And so I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about the benchmarking. So, you know, Montgomery County requires certain buildings to do energy benchmarking, right? So I looked up the energy benchmarking data. Sorry, it's running. And we want this one, listed commercial buildings, both public and private, participating in the county's benchmarking. All right. So now I have a list, when I view the data, of all of the businesses that have provided benchmarking data to Montgomery County for their energy usage. So if I'm a facilities management company, that could be a really valuable list for me. And the thing to think about is, if you look here, you can actually export this data, which I actually already did. Over here. And here's the list. Now, in this case, it's a list of 156 businesses or buildings in Montgomery County that did the benchmarking. So to me, the way to think about this is not as Montgomery County simply as a customer, but Montgomery County as a source of data that can help you build your business, okay? I encourage you to poke around in these databases, look at what's there, you know, search all of the different Data Montgomery data sets. Take some time with this, because this information is valuable to you in terms of what's out there that you can use to build your business. So one of the other things I wanted to share with you in this, because this is something that people just don't understand. So this is the central vendor registration system, okay? I think most people who are interested in doing business with Montgomery County have registered in the central vendor registration system. This is a collaboration between not only Montgomery County, but it also includes Montgomery College, Montgomery County Public Schools, Housing Opportunities, Park and Planning, and City of Rockville. So that means that these organizations use this database to find businesses that can meet their needs. But businesses can also use this database to find other businesses, okay? So there's multiple ways you can search this database. Now, because we were talking about the facilities management, I had done a search earlier for a particular type of service. In this case, what I was looking at was facilities management. I didn't see anything that actually gave me that specifically, but I did find real estate property management in a couple of different places. Now, what this is, by the way, is the National Institute of Government Procurement Commodity Code listing. It's what the county uses to classify the types of services and goods we buy. So once we select that, we can go and find a list of 182 businesses that do real estate and property management. Again, potentially a list of clients for different types of businesses, could be partners, could be all kinds of interesting aspects to this list that you might be able to use. Now, I will tell you that sometimes I find that businesses don't always accurately describe what commodities and services they provide. I think their thinking is, I'm just going to list everything I possibly can. I advise against that. I mean, I think that when you're registering this database, your registration should be accurate. So make sure that when you select the types of commodities and services you provide, that you make that correct. And you can select more than one. You don't have to just select one thing. But the nice thing about this, again, is that you can export it to Excel so that you then have a list that you can use to either track or follow these businesses. Maybe you're going to want to reach out to them, and you can track who you've reached out to and what the results are. Typically, these include contact information as well, so you can reach directly out. Now, I will say one thing: there is kind of a downside to this database. It's not really managed in that if one of these businesses were to go out of business, they would stay in this database. So there would be a need to do some due diligence on your own part to go through and make sure that these are actually current businesses. There are other ways you can search this database. Let's say you have an interest in doing business with small businesses that are local, okay? So you can actually search just on Montgomery County local small business. And this is not intuitive. It's something you just have to know you can do. But here's roughly 250 local small businesses in Montgomery County, right? That might be something that's of interest to you. Another one you might want to search on, say you're interested in green businesses. You can look at that. 44. These are businesses that are registered as green businesses with Montgomery County government. Okay. A new one, we just recently passed this local business preference program, and we've been certifying local businesses. So here you have almost 1,000 local. They're not just small, but they are local. And you can also do minority, female, and disabled-owned businesses. These are businesses that are certified by various third-party certification entities, like MDOT. I think that's Baltimore. So there's 740 of those. So as you can see, this database, which most people think is just where they register as a vendor, this is public information that can be used by businesses to build their business. The last thing I just wanted to show you, this is a new thing in the Office of Procurement, where they are actually doing solicitation projections. And again, like I said, we don't do forecasting, but what they've done is they've taken that data set of contracts, and they're looking at contracts that are expiring in the next, say, 12 to 18 months. I think it's about 12 months. There's some in the winter of 2021. So again, this gives you an idea of what kinds of things are going to be coming up for bid in the next year or so. This, again, is a new thing. And I also wanted to just make sure, I know all of you are probably familiar with this, but just make sure that you know that this is where procurement is where the solicitations that are on the street currently are listed. Okay, these are formal. So these are the bigger ones that are managed by the Office of Procurement. There's also informal, which typically are managed by the departments themselves. And there's also open solicitations, which are always on the street. You can actually submit an RFP or a proposal for any of these anytime. Typically, they'll have a list of the businesses that have been approved for that solicitation or type of work. Another thing I wanted to just show you, on every solicitation that's a formal, so these are the bigger ones that are managed by the the Office of Procurement. You can also look at the bidders list for any of these. So again, this gives you an idea of other businesses that you might partner with, or if you weren't going to actually bid on this, but you could provide services to somebody who did, that could potentially give you an idea of some potential customers. So again, all of this is there. I think it's just that it's not intuitive to people typically to go look at these various places to see this information. But the value is extending your thinking past just Montgomery County as a customer and looking at these other data sources as an opportunity. So I call this secret, not secret, because it seems like it's secret because nobody knows that these things are there. They're just not aware. But it's not secret. They're all public databases, and they're all things that are available to you as you're looking at ways to build your business. And it's, in this day and age, we're looking for everything we can, and also looking to try and figure out if there's a way to pivot. There might be some information in here that gives you an idea of a different way to do things. So I would encourage you to, like I said, I think you should take a few minutes to poke around in these databases and see what's there. I'm going to stop sharing for now, and kind of come back out here to the main room and let you know, first of all, that I'm available to any business in Montgomery County. My title is Small Business Navigator. I will tell you, I never do a size test. I never say, hey, how many employees do you have? I'm not going to help you. But I'm available to help if you just need some further guidance in this. I will provide a presentation to Jane after this that has links to all of these databases and sources of information, and kind of step-by-step on how you go through this. But I think I'll leave it there, Jane, and if people have questions, I'm certainly happy to answer anything.
Great. Well, we do have a few questions, and as I just put in the chat, if you have a question for Judy, if you would please put it in the chat. The first question that we have is, just give me 1 second, I'll open them up. This comes from Ed Finneran, and I'm not sure whether this is in this data set or if it's somewhere else, but he says his dream data scrape is to pull everyday office space build-out permits so that they know who's building office space in the county. Can we find that in this data set, or can they find that somewhere else?
You can find building permits in Data Montgomery. And again, sometimes this data, you have to work with it, right? I mean, it's not, nobody's building this for a particular purpose. So it's just information, but it's information that's there and it's exportable. So you can look at the building permits and figure out where that's happening and who's filing for the building permits. So that might be helpful to you.
Okay. Can we use Data Montgomery to find budgets on contracts?
That's an interesting question. So I'm not sure. So what you're looking for is, like, you're saying, okay, I'm interested in bidding on this contract. What is the value of the contract? So basically, the only way you can kind of gather what that's going to be is to see whether it's a formal contract or an informal contract or a direct purchase order, which gives you the broad categories. Like, a formal is 100,000 to 10 million. Informal is 10,000 to 100,000, and I'm rounding, right? And then direct contracts are under 10. So that it's not all that helpful. But what you can do is see what's been spent previously to get an idea of what might be spent in the future.
And another question, this is from Dr. Valentine. Can we use Data Montgomery to find information on the previous vendor who has held the contract up for bid? And can we use Data Montgomery to find out the amount of the award previously awarded?
So I don't think that, well, I mean, if you look at if you can get the contract documents to download, that will give you an idea of what the bid was, which might give you an idea of what the value was. it's not going to be quite that specific. This is all just kind of, you're interpreting or interpolating from what information is available to get an idea of what might be available in the future. And there's no, Dr. Valentine, there's no guarantee ever of exactly what things might be, but the idea is that this gives you some idea of the scope when you can look back and see what was spent on something previously. And again, this is most valuable for those ongoing types of contracts. Obviously, there's going to be contracts that are project-based that will close out and won't happen again. But for the ongoing requirements, you can look back and see what the track record has been, which will give you an idea of what might happen going forward, with no guarantees at all, of course.
Okay.
Helpful, huh?
Okay, from Nigel Smith, a question: can we identify businesses with a supplier diversity program?
Probably not. Although I will say, so this is something to keep in mind. So any prime vendor that has a contract with Montgomery County is required to at least attempt to put in place a utilization plan for minority women and disabled-owned businesses, right? So here's the thing. When somebody gets a contract, the expectation is that they are going to develop and put in place a performance plan for the utilization of MFD firms. So sometimes what happens is that the prime vendor will come back and say, I made a good faith effort and I couldn't find anybody that could, either subcontract or provide services to me that is a minority, female, or disabled owned business. So my suggestion is, when you're looking at that set of contracts, for a minority woman owned or disabled owned business, that contract list is a potential customer list, right? You are certified as one of these businesses that they need to find. So that's your opportunity to go to those businesses and say, look, we can help you fulfill your commitment to Montgomery County to utilize minority, female, or disabled owned businesses. So that's the opportunity. I mean, I guess actually the answer is, every one of those contracts represents a business that really should be utilizing an MFD firm on their Montgomery County contract. And the more they know that you're there and available, the less likely they are to say, I can't find anybody. And that's why it's really important also to get registered. If you're interested in this type of work at all, you should be certified as either minority, women, or disabled owned, and you should be registered in the database so that people know you're there. Because other people are, those businesses that need to find those companies can use that central vendor registration system to locate minority, female, and disabled owned firms. So it's kind of a interwoven opportunity.
Okay, thank you. From Shannon Gorman, is there a list of companies by services provided and by number of employees?
Well, and hey, Shannon, how are you? So again, you can kind of intuit this, right? So the services, absolutely, either in Data Montgomery or in the central vendor registration system, you can search by the services provided. Now in Data Montgomery, it's more of just a search, right? You might search on keywords. In the vendor registration system, it's a search on commodity codes. So either way. And then the contracts database, not so much, but the central vendor registration system is where you can search for the local small businesses, which, depending on the type of business, there are certain employee limits to qualify as a local small business, but it depends on what type of business you are. Service businesses are different than construction businesses, which are different than retail. So again, you're not going to get exact, but you will get an idea of the size of the business.
And Marilyn Balcom would like to know, for the people who receive county COVID grants, is this where they will eventually be listed, or where will those eventually be listed?
Well, that's actually a great question. I think that the intention is that The list of grantees will be included in the annual report for the Economic Development Fund. But that's actually, I mean, that's something that could be requested, that they be put out in Data Montgomery as well. I mean, that, I don't know why that couldn't be.
I was just curious because, you know, we had to go through the vendor registration system.
Right.
So I just didn't know, you know, if we went through that vendor system, whether we would be listed here or not. Just curious.
Right. Well, I mean, you will be in the vendors. Again, you would be one of those businesses that people could search and find in the central vendor registration system. That's actually an interesting question, though. Why couldn't that just be published? Thank you, Marilyn.
Okay. Okay, great. Mike Larson is asking, are LGBTQA plus certified businesses recognized by Montgomery County as minority businesses?
I don't think that is a certification that we currently recognize, but I think that's something that could certainly be requested. I will raise that. What is the certification?
LGBTQA plus.
Okay.
Okay.
So we have over time, the list of third-party certifiers has changed. So, I mean, it's not that that couldn't be added.
Mike is saying that NGLCC does the certification.
Okay. Thanks.
And from Farah, I'm going to mess up this name, my apologies. Arjang, Farah Arjang. Do you need to have been registered as a business for a certain number of years in order to be able to register with Montgomery County to do business? In other words, can I register with Montgomery County if I've just registered my business in Maryland, although I have been in business for a while without registering in Maryland?
There is no time limit or time expectation to register as a business with Montgomery County. Just remember that that's not any guarantee that you're going to get work. I mean, that just is, it's just a registration. So there are, each of our third-party certifiers has different requirements for, you may have to be in business for a certain period of time to get a certification with like MDOT. But the county would not place any kind of restrictions on how long you've been in business.
Okay. And just a reminder to everybody, if you've not already done so, and you didn't hear it at the very beginning, in order to get a copy of a list of everybody who's been here on this webinar, please put your name and your company in the chat for us. And do we have any other questions? That's the last question that I've seen. So does anyone else have any questions for Judy?
Wow.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I do. I can't type fast enough to get to the chat. Judy, can you show us again how you got to the list of companies under the vendor of the central vendor registration system?
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, we'll get to it. Hang on. There. So again, Drina, this is not very intuitive, okay? But and one thing I don't think you can do, I don't think you can run just the complete list of businesses. Yeah. But if you're looking for a particular kind of business, okay? So let's say you want to partner with somebody. Just as an example, okay? So that'll give you a list of all of the marketing companies, people that have marketing consulting as one of their commodity codes, okay? If you're looking for a local small business, now this will let you just run the complete list of local small businesses, okay, 250 or so. So these are the searches, hang on, that are based on the different types of categories of businesses that we track. So these are the minority, women-owned and disabled-owned businesses. Andrina, I'm going to send this presentation. So and actually I have a very detailed step-by-step for how to search the central vendor registration system. So Jane, I'll send that one to you as well.
Okay. Yeah, and Judy has slides that we'll send with this, but we thought it would be the most useful if she actually went online and showed you the process. So the slides will be instructive in the words that she said, but the video that you'll get will show you exactly how to do what she's talking about on the slides, if that makes any sense. So, okay, I don't see any other questions for Judy. Going once, going twice. If you didn't get your question, we had 2 questions. Okay, hang on. John Quinter, we had 2 questions for Judy about preference.
Hey,
County
hey,
John, go ahead and unmute yourself if you want to ask a couple of questions.
There it goes.
There you go.
Questions for Judy. First, does the county give any priority, any preference to businesses that are located in the county or owned by county residents over outside the borders of Montgomery County businesses? I looked when we're flashing through the database, see several, Falls Church, Virginia.
I'm going to repeat that question because I can barely hear you, your microphone. You're asking the question is, does the county give a preference to businesses that are based in the county or owned by county employee or county residents? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, Judy?
So sometime in the past, the recent past, which it's hard to keep track of anymore, the county did pass a local business preference program, okay? So what that is it gives points, extra points on any solicitation. So, you've got your small business reserve program, which is a set-aside program. So with the LSBRP, the local small business reserve program, only local small businesses can respond to those solicitations. The local business preference program applies to anything else that's a solicitation, either formal or informal. I'm wrong about that. It's formal. Any formal solicitation. If you're a local business, you get extra points. And I think that the qualification as far as local is the same as it is for the local small business reserve program. There's just not the size standard. But I think it's a 10% bonus for businesses that are local. So that's new. I mean, that's a new program. At first I was concerned that it might take away from the local small business reserve program, but actually it benefits all local businesses. So it's just an added bonus if you're local.
Okay. And did you have another question?
Second question was, can Judy provide any tips for us on how a very small local business can compete with some of the larger businesses that they may be in competition with for a contract? Can we get any word on unbundling things or going after a portion of a contract, being a sub, that kind of question?
Can you repeat that, Judy?
So the question was, are there any tips for how a small business can compete with larger businesses on county contracts? So if it's, so to your point, partnering is actually a good option for the larger contracts. Although honestly, having run a small business myself, that is really hard. It's really hard to put together, multiple businesses. But if that's an option, that's always a benefit. I know that the county executive has an interest in ensuring that we're not arbitrarily bundling contracts to make them too big that small businesses can't respond. That's an ongoing battle. The issue is that the things that make procurement folks really good, and they kind of try to mitigate risk, they try to simplify the process, those things are counter to the interests of small businesses, which would prefer that contracts not be bundled and that, you know, they get credit for not being risky because they're not. It's just an ongoing education process, and it's an ongoing battle, frankly. But, you know, I would say that as long as you have a good proposal framework, you know, that it would be almost impossible for somebody evaluating a proposal to know the size of your business if you put together a really strong proposal. And, you know, I know you all have done a lot of government work, so I think you probably have a very good proposal template.
But at the same time, we wind up with, we have to say what the staff is in the proposal. So it's clear it's going to be a very, very small business.
Right.
Our level of expertise at all of what they're asking for in that contract is not going to be as strong in some areas as others.
Well, and I do think that that's where
I hate to see getting eliminated or getting overlooked because of that, because of the size.
Well, and I do think that that's where having strong partnerships, you know, even if it's just a network of other businesses that you work with regularly, that you can put forward as part of the team that's responding, even if you're the lead on it, and those folks are not direct employees but are partners. I think you can still present that case.
Would you briefly address the issue of a small business being the primary contract holder and subbing to a larger business? Because I know frequently that really happens.
Right. I think I think there are requirements that the small business do at least 50% of the work. But I think that can be a really, you know, especially for a contract that's set aside for local small business reserve program, you know, that makes having a local business more attractive to a big business. So the small business is the prime, the big business is the sub. The big business gets at least a portion of the work, but the contract has been set aside for a local small. So it's an option. I mean, I've thought sometimes in the past that, you know, sometimes we set aside smaller contracts for the local small business reserve program. Maybe we should set aside bigger contracts, forcing the big businesses to be the subs. But that's just my crazy thinking.
Well, Judy, actually, we have a question for Brian from 3Cs talking about small businesses. What qualifies a company as a certified small business for Montgomery County? Is it revenue? Is it employees?
So it's one or the other. Let me see if I can get to that. Let's see. Let's go back to this one. So if you go back to the procurement website, let's see here. Sorry. So if you look at the contract compliance section, it'll talk about the local business programs. And this will show you what the size standards are. So it's either employee or average sales, and it varies depending on the type of business.
Okay.
Okay.
Question, is there a place you can find a list of commodities the agencies purchased, or should we just assume that all agencies buy everything? And actually, that leads to a good opportunity. My colleagues, my chamber colleagues, fellow chamber colleagues are also hosting, along with the Department of Procurement,
right,
in cooperation with them, a procurement conference that is on Wednesday, December 9th. And it's an all-day event. I'll include a link to that or some information about that when I send out the information about this program. That's going to be on December 9th. And the way that they've organized it, when we discuss this, is they've organized it by business category type. So instead of of the normal procurement conferences they have where you go and talk to each department. This is going to be organized in sections by, for example, the first section I think deals with IT services and some other things, and there's a section that deals with construction. So those will be at different times of the day. So you'll be able to, when you sign up, you'll be able to check off which parts you want to attend, and then that'll give you an idea of multiple departments purchase multiple things, but it'll at least give you an idea of what's upcoming in the near future, because that's the way they're structuring the procurement fair as well. And there'll be different logins, different sessions on Teams for each of the different categories of business. So
thank you for mentioning that. I had meant to mention that because it's the first time that procurement has done a virtual procurement fair. So, and the chambers again were very instrumental in encouraging and helping procurement figure out how to do that. So as far as what departments buy, I think that your best opportunity is to look at the budget to see what they're planning on spending their money on. Sometimes it is not as clear cut as the example I gave you as the facilities management, and then you have to go to the commodity codes and try and figure out what relates to that particular thing that a department is buying. But I think at least the budget gives you an idea. And you have to poke around in this, right? You have to actually dig down into it and look at it in different ways, and set aside some time to just really explore these databases, because you have to kind of learn how to think like they think and make some connections. So like, for instance, you might find, let's say that facilities management company, you might want to go look them up in the central vendor registration system and see what commodity codes they've listed for themselves, to help you make that connection between how it's being described in one database and how it's being described in a different set of data.
Judy, we have a question about what are the different categories within the minority-owned businesses, and how do businesses register?
So minority-owned can be, well, let's go back to that. Hang on. Let's see, which one was it? Okay, so when we're looking at this, let's see. Oh, it's the MFD one, I'm sorry. So here are the certifying agencies. So the Maryland Department of Transportation, and they certify a variety of types of businesses, minority business enterprises, disadvantaged, women-owned. And it's different categories of minority-owned that are, pre-selected by the Maryland Department of Transportation as disadvantaged or, in underrepresented in contracting. This is the 8A program. That's for minority-owned businesses. The Women's Business Enterprise National Council, they certify women-owned businesses. They also do that for the federal government. And then we also accept the Capital Region Minority Supplier Development Council, so they certify, and then the City of Baltimore. So at one point in time, I think the county did its own certification, but that ended up, it got to be too complicated, and people would argue whether this was really a local company, whether they were really minority owned. So we do certify local, but we don't certify the minority or women owned or disabled owned. We just use other certifying agencies to do that. It takes the guesswork out of it and gives us a clear cut, this is just what it is.
Can I just interject two things? One, the Maryland Department of Transportation, they certify for the whole state. So
Oops.
Don't get confused when it says DOT. Even if you're not looking at DOT, it's certification statewide. It's just a weird thing that it's MDOT that does it. So that's important. But as Judy was talking about procurement. The procurement process had a long history of being overwhelming and cumbersome, but that's changed. So if you had an experience with procurement from years ago and just kind of threw up your hands and said it's no use, it's just too difficult, please give it another chance, because the director, when the director came in, he really looked at the process and really streamlined the process. So the initial bidding process is much, much easier. You still have to go through all the hoops and hurdles along the way, but that initial phase is much easier. So please give it another try. Thanks.
Thank you, Marilyn. Appreciate that. I think that one thing to build on that is that these programs are only as successful as the participation of the business community. So the local Small Business Reserve Program, the Minority Female Disabled Owned Program, in order to make the county departments confident in these programs, we need robust and highly qualified businesses to be part of the pool. So to Marilyn's point, don't let past experiences keep you from considering opportunities going forward. Ash Shetty, who's the new director of the Office of Procurement, is a real blue sky thinker and has no preconceived notions about what can and cannot be done. I think a lot of his plans got disrupted, like for all of us with the pandemic, but one of the things that he's planning on doing is looking at all of the procurement regulations, just start to finish, to see what can be streamlined, what can be simplified, what is an old requirement that is no longer relevant that could be eliminated. That would be a lot of work, but I think as soon as we return to some sense of normalcy, I think that's something that he'll be looking at. And I do think that, there's one thing about there are some silver linings to the pandemic. And I think that looking at some opportunities, we did a lot of streamlined buying during this just because we had to. We needed to get things, PPE and other types of things. So I think that could lead us to see that there is an opportunity to not be quite so rigid or quite so cumbersome, and that we could potentially streamline some things going forward, even afterwards.
Well, and to Marilyn's point, and Judy, to your point, I mean, Ash has already streamlined the first process. He cut down the initial application form was like, I don't know how many, maybe more than 100 pages long.
100.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. And we would talk to members all the time who would say, I looked at that and it was like, I can't even fathom trying. And now I think he's got it down to like 30 pages, which is still a long application, but it's a lot better.
Right. If I can also show you one thing he did. So if you look here, to Jane's point, it would take people a lot of, you'd have to read 40 pages before you got to the scope of work. So one thing he did was pull out the guts of the scope of the work so that it's posted right here up front. So you can at least look at it and say, okay, well, I can't do that work, or I can. And then you can go into the full scope and the full documentation that you'll need to look at in order to respond.
Okay. Well, we've come to the end of our hour that we planned for the webinar part of this, or for the seminar educational part of this. And I will give you one last chance as I thank my colleagues, to ask another question. But for those of you who would like, we'll have an opportunity for the next half hour. We'll split you up into small rooms, and we'll get an opportunity to network with each other. And we'll do that at rounds until 11:30 until everybody's ready to go, if you would like to do that. So with that, I don't see any more questions, and I would like to thank my colleagues from the Gaithersburg Germantown Chamber, the Greater Bethesda Chamber, and the Rockville Chamber for co-hosting with us this morning. It's been a great event. I really appreciate that, and we really want to thank Judy for being a part of this event and for giving us so much information this morning, and for being such a good friend and advocate and supporter, and doing everything she can for the business community in all of Montgomery County. We are really lucky to have Judy in Montgomery County government and to be such a friend of ours. So thank you so much, Judy.